I think the power has to be put back, and that's why I'm so into empowering other artists, no matter what field they do, to empower themselves to become well-versed in the business side. And I think we have to, as creatives, take that power back, and we need to become self-sufficient and create entities. The thing with Symbiotic Nation, those are one of the big things, is drawing all this talent from different types of media and empowering them to be able to become the people that are leading the change and leading the shape of what's happening, and not having these companies and these conglomerates taking over.
Hello, and welcome to the Hollywood Hustle Podcast, where we bring you the stories and struggles of artists climbing the ladder of success and how they survive the city of dreams, Los Angeles. Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of the podcast. My name is Michael Lutheran. I am the producer of the podcast. I can't believe it. We are at number 20. To think just a few weeks ago we were on episode 1. That feels like forever ago, but no, we're here now, and we're here at 20, so still feeling really good. Daniel is still in Texas, unfortunately, or fortunately. You better be enjoying your vacation, buddy. But I'm still with you today, guys. Now, today we're going to be jumping back into our conversation with Eric Knight, but before we do, we had a question this past week that we posted on our social media accounts, and the question was, what is your dream that you're working hard to pursue? And we got a lot of great responses, but this one answer in particular really spoke to me, and I'm interested to hearing what you all think about this. Donnie Smith commented, "My dream as an actor is to hold a mirror up to society to reflect it, the good, the bad, the ugly, in the characters I portray. My dream is to continue working with like-minded artists, writers, directors, producers, all the crew, to tell stories that entertain and move audiences. I've had the good fortune to make my dreams reality, albeit with a day job. The big dream, for all artists, I believe, is to make a living from those dreams. Even then, we keep hustling." Thank you so much, Donnie. This was such an amazing comment, and when I read this comment, my head just went because you hit on my thoughts and feelings exactly when it comes to being an actor. I think it is so great that you are so aware of where you are right now. It sounds like your head is in the right space in terms of thinking about the types of characters that you want to play. You don't want to be pigeonholed to just one type. You're open to playing any type of character, but that you're also focused on who you want to have as a part of your journey. The artists, writers, producers, directors, and of course the crew. The crew is a huge element in any kind of scenario, whether you're working in front of the camera or on stage. It's all about the crew. And that is so great that you've been able to make those dreams into a reality. Like you said, you also have a day job as well, but it's great that you got to keep up that hustle. That fact that you have that day job to allow you to continue to pursue your dreams and make some success with that. And I think that is absolutely phenomenal. I think that is the dream of any artist, is to be able to make a living from those dreams, as you perfectly put it. So thank you so much, Donnie, for answering that question. If you didn't get a chance to answer it, tweet at us or send us a message. Our email is hollywoodhustlepodcast@gmail.com. What is your dream that you are working hard to pursue? Now, the gentleman that we know worked really hard to pursue his dreams is Eric Knight. And we are back with the lead singer from the Disciples of Babylon, talent manager, artist empowerment guru, I'm liking this term, Eric Knight. In Act 2, I join Daniel and Eric to talk about LA, not only about a city of artists, but one that is also a city of immigration, and those that have shaped our city's culture from people who have come here from all over the world. We also discuss the current state of music, its impact, or perhaps lack thereof, on our current culture, and how important it is for artists to empower themselves to be a source for change. At the end of this episode, we are so excited to be debuting the first official ever release of Disciples of Babylon's new hit song, Without You. So sit back, relax, enjoy. Daniel, take it away.
All right, and we are back here with Mr. Eric Knight. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing good videotaping you guys.
Ooh,
as I videotape me.
Why do you keep giving me the undress symbol? Please,
the undress symbol?
Please stop
That's
doing
your
that.
cue.
I'll touch his beard.
And that is the voice, the man who always crosses the streams, Mr. Michael Lutheran,
Hello, everyone.
formerly known as Michael Catholic.
Michael Catholic.
Michael Presbyterian.
Michael Buddha.
Michael,
I like Michael
Sit with that a
Presbyterian.
few months ago.
Michael Atheist. That was a dark den. So we're just here to talk about LA in this one and kind of how that inspires you and just kind of just a discussion roundtable.
Of course, with Hollywood Hustle, not only do we talk about the entertainment industry, but just living in this town and everything like that. Now, in the previous episode, we got a chance to hear from you talking about Miami and also the cultural influences of that. Now, Miami and Los Angeles are both LA cities and what I would call Latin American cities. They're both cities that were founded in many ways out of immigration.
Right.
As someone whose parents were Cuban immigrants and everything like that, I'd love to kind of talk for a little bit more about immigration contribution to both of these cities. And, we can obviously focus on Los Angeles as well, but also your views of how, immigration shapes culture, shapes music, art, and everything like that. I think we're in a time right now in this country where this is a discussion that's happening.
Oh, yeah.
Even in across dinner tables and stuff like that. And I think it's important that we highlight these contributions.
Definitely.
So, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as cultural contributions, I mean, I think, we're living in a time now, obviously, that is...
It's rough.
It's
rough.
It's rough. I don't want to get onto a bash here, but it's an interesting time. I don't want to compare it to like the 60s, but it almost seems like we're in a different, modern day version of what like the 60s were going through with all the changes and everything that's going on. And it's interesting because there's a show that I just saw yesterday that premiered from Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. Soundtracks
That's
from
right,
CNN.
It's on CNN.
Man, I just saw the first episode. It was brilliantly produced. I mean, it's great. And they're talking about the whole cultural shift between what was going on. The first episode was about the civil rights movement and how the music shaped that time and how it just, and
that's the theme throughout the show. Looking at certain points in time.
And how they influenced, the music influenced it. So it's a really great show. And so it's funny that you're actually talking about that. And so I think, we're in a time, it's weird because we're in a different time because I don't think now music is what's happening now with the culture. It's not what's influencing things now, I think. There's so many, first of all, we're getting bombarded into so many different directions, being marketed to, being, that it's hard to capture people's attention, which is the hardest thing that I think any artist, whether you're a actor, whether you're a musician, is trying to capture people's attention. So I think it's weird because I don't think music is what it necessarily once was, even though everybody still consumes it like crazy. It wasn't once what it was revered to be like it was back then.
You referenced the 60s and everything. Someone like Bob Dylan.
Exactly.
He had a specific message that he was speaking to, and that was specifically talking about the time that was going on. And that in turn helped shape the discussions.
Right,
and so what you're kind of saying then is that currently there's so much... being put out there by so many different voices, whether it's marketing companies, with advancements in technology, musicians, specifically yourself, can put out music much more easily than back in the 60s.
It's almost like, it's weird. It's almost like now the technology companies and the guys that are doing it, those are the rock stars of this era. I don't think that music is influencing the culture as it once was, which is weird, but it's true because, people, I think, although music is still a big part of everybody's life, it's not, I don't think it has the importance as it once did back then in those eras in the 60s and 70s to where, you had a song that would come out and would speak to everybody. There are those songs that are doing it now, and it's funny because they were talking about it in that special that I watched, like Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah,
and
I was just
like
about to say right now, when we're recording this episode, it's the final week of Coachella,
right?
And
Kendrick Lamar is going to be closing out the concert
Exactly.
tomorrow, I believe, right? And he just dropped an album himself last Friday, on Good Friday.
Right.
And there's a lot of discussion about that, of just being an artist, not even going through your label, just, hey, I'm an artist and I'm dropping my work about this specific topic.
Right. Yeah, so it's one of these things that, as far as the culture, I think there's a lot of different things that are influencing it, but I would suspect that there's going to be a lot more music. I mean, a lot of the songs that we have for this new record that's coming up, ironically enough, the title of our album is called The Rise and Fall of Babylon. Not to be a play on the word of the name of the band, Disciples of Babylon, but just I feel, and this is my personal belief, I just feel like the United States, our country, yeah, it's the greatest country in the world. Very proud to be here, born and raised, but I just feel like the country has been resting on their laurels for so long, and there has been such pent-up animosity around the world towards us because of being in that position, that I believe it's starting to backfire now. And, just with this president that we have now, which I just do not agree with anything that this man has to say, and that's a whole other thing that we can get into, but it's a very scary time now that we're living in,
But oftentimes through human experience, throughout history, comes back to music.
It does. It does.
A lot of the blues music, blues was born through in the plantation fields and everything like that. It was used as a tool of survival and endurance.
Exactly.
And struggle.
And struggle. And so it's now, we're at this point where people are struggling.
Exactly.
What can come out
what
of
pulls
this.
them together. Yeah. And I still believe wholeheartedly. And again, I'm not trying to, it's not anything against music, because that's like what I live and breathe and do. And it's so much part of me. It's the one medium, I believe, that pulls any person around the globe together. So it's the one form of medium that can pull anybody together. I mean, you look at other cultures look at Michael Jackson and what an influence he had around the globe and how much influence his music and impact it made. So to me, that's why I love doing music, because it has the ability to drive change. I just don't think now in this present time it's driving the change in the culture. I think there's other things that are driving that. That's not to say that it'll change, but I don't think it is right now.
Well, I feel like in a lot of ways music has been caged a little bit through computers, and anybody can technically be a recording artist.
Yes.
Nowadays, they don't sound. It sounds like a robot singing for the most part. But I mean, how many people can actually sing live?
That's the great.
Well
that's
anymore,
the good thing and the bad thing. It's a catch-22, because with the advent of being able to record music from your home, and there's been some incredible recordings that are coming out that are being released on records that sound incredible, that are coming out of people's homes. So it's not to knock that, but with that comes the glut, like what you said, of like that everybody now thinks that they can do it. And so you have millions of other people that have no business being a musician, or that, there's no talent there. And it's not to knock people, but it's just the truth. There's a lot of crap out there. And so it's making it harder to sift through that and get through that glut.
Well, I think to tie in also with kind of the discussing like about the times and the eras and how music has shaped them, you mentioned in the previous episode about how Universal being your specific example, trying to come up with ways where they control kind of everything in a lot of ways. And I feel like, if an artist comes up and says, hey, I want to write a song about, equal rights for everyone, every single person, illegal immigrants, LGBTQ,
right,
everyone, equal pay, equal benefits, everything. What's keeping them from going, ooh, let's just talk about going out to a party and maybe wanting a guy's number and being shy about asking for it. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's true. I mean,
not to knock any song like that, but
right. Yeah.
And so you're also just talking though from the business end, like so much of it is owned by businesses where they have so many people, shareholders or whatever, that are also making the decisions for them.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, caging it. They're caging where
you're stifling the creativity of,
exactly.
and I think that's another thing. And I think
they control the album that comes out.
Exactly.
They control the time
the
you
music,
have in the studio. So if you're recording an anti-establishment song that they feel is going to be bad for business, like you said, for their shareholders, things like that, what's keeping them, unless they're they're progressive enough to allow it to happen, or your music is subtle enough where they just don't understand that that's what it's about.
I think the power has to be put back, and that's why I'm so into empowering other artists, no matter what field they do, whether they're a painter or any kind of medium, to empower themselves to become well versed in the business side. And I think we have to, as creatives, take that power back, and we need to become self-sufficient and create new entities. And like the thing with Symbiotic Nation, those are one of the big things, is drawing all this talent from different media, from different types of media, and empowering them to be able to become the people that are leading the change and leading the shape of what's happening, and not having these companies and these conglomerates taking over. I think there has to be somebody that comes up with a studio, a movie studio that's just kind of like American Zoetrope with when you had all these famous producers, Coppola and all these guys. They started as independent, and look at all the stuff that they did and how they ended up shaping.
With going back to music, do you think that approach could be like what Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar have been doing, where they don't go through necessarily their label, they themselves, the artists, just drop it?
It's starting to happen more and more. There was that other rap guy that just won the Grammy. What's his name? He's in the Kit Kat commercials. My God, I can't remember his name now. But you know who I'm talking about. If you see the Kit Kat commercial, he just
Chance
the Rapper.
Yeah.
He just won the first Grammy and had a completely, totally independent record, and it was the first Grammy ever won from just did it by himself. And there's always another side to that story. You don't see the other sides of those stories. Mm-hmm. But somebody like a Beyonce and stuff like that, they can go on their own now if they wanted to. Hire their own staff of people, hire their own marketing, and doing it because they've already have millions of fans.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done because they have already established that they've been under the old paradigm, which was the record label paradigm. It's now coming up with the new things that are coming out that are going to influence that, and that's why I'm so into wanting to put these mastermind groups together with different creatives and trying to see how we can shape and build these new infrastructures that can kind of promote change to where we control what it is that we're putting out. It's an interesting thing. I mean, I'm just
Well, I think it's working in the system. I mean, if especially to look at Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, I believe
the great philosophy.
The great philosophy. I believe Matt Damon or Ben Affleck says it in the movie, which I think, even though it is a comedy film, but I think it's really important here is that you do the big budget film, the studio movie, so that you can do your passion project,
which is what a lot of people are doing now. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing
you work the system.
Yeah, you're starting to see that happening. I just wish that there would be another way to do that and build another, kind of platform to where you can do that. And that's kind of one of the things that I've been trying to figure out with that project Symbiotic Nation. That's one of the big things where I'm trying to pull different creatives from different areas and try to grow these things. And I'm real big into keeping your own content and to ownership of your content. I think is just critically important. What you guys are doing, it's great because that's content that you guys are creating, and I think that's why we're seeing such a creative zenith in television now, because there's this influx now of all these networks and Hulu and my God, everybody doing original content.
You want to do is take a little bit of the struggle out of where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I connect with these people?
How do you connect, and how do you go to a place where you can create content and that you're the owner of the content, which is a really big thing for me. I think so many bands are getting screwed over still to this very day because they don't take the time to read their contracts and see what's going on. And I'm just a real big proponent of owning your own content, and that goes across any medium, whether you're an actor, you're doing film, your own movies and stuff. I'm really big into that.
So let's go back to LA and talk about the music scene here.
Okay.
Any specific for you guys? Any specific places that you love to go to? Any specific clubs that you find are your favorites? Why? What about them? You really inspires you or pushes you?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. I mean, the classic that everybody goes to, all the rock guys go to, like the Rainbow over in Hollywood. I mean, that's not necessarily a club, even though they have music. It's more of a restaurant, but it's kind of one of these things where you can go and it's just you never know who you're going to run into there. I mean, I used to go there all the time before Lemmy from Motorhead passed away. You could always see Lemmy playing in the little slot machine in the back of the thing. So that has its charm. I love going to the Viper Room to go check out bands. I mean, we play there all the time, and the Viper Room is great. And yeah, I mean, there's just clubs like that are really cool that, just never kind of lose their charm. There's something about them that,
There's also the history to it.
Their history, exactly, and the infamy of some of the clubs, like the Viper Room with everything that's happened there. And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where, when you go there, again, you get inspired, especially if you go and you watch a band, you're like, my God, these guys are killing it. And it just makes you want to get up there and play. And so it's a cool thing. It's a cool thing to kind of recharge your batteries with.
One of my favorite places in LA to go check out bands and stuff. Unfortunately, it recently closed, but I think the owners of the bar are about to open another one, just like it. It was the Piano Bar.
Oh, okay, cool. They closed it down on Hollywood?
Yeah, It was on Hollywood and Selma. Okay. For all of you out there who are looking at a map, it was on Hollywood and Selma.
Yeah. GoogleMaps.com.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the Piano Bar 2 is coming, so they're creating a sequel. Cool. But it was this great place. There wasn't anything too fancy about it. It was just this dark room that you could just cram in as many people as possible around the band.
Right.
And it was one of the only places I've found here in LA where people would just come to listen to the music. And they had this house band there that would play phenomenal, but there was this one musician, Miles Mosley. I've never seen anyone rock a stand-up bass like he would. And he would do Voodoo Child.
Nice.
You would look around and everyone just has this smile. And the room is just blowing up with music. It was great. I hope that the new version of it comes back just like that.
I think any place can be a venue, obviously, in LA.
Yeah.
Where can you guys think of that you think would be fun to have like a concert? Or are there any places around LA that you think would that would be such a cool place just to put something on, whether it be theater or music?
It's already been done before, but I mean, one of the places that I've always dreamed about doing a thing or shooting a video, but it's been done obviously before, is the Observatory is one of my favorite places. I also like the Getty Center, which I think they do have some kind of music events there, but to put on a full-on concert there, I think would be really cool.
That would be really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you guys think.
Well, I when I went to university, I went to UC Davis, and my theater group, Studio 301, we would do site-specific theater.
Oh, cool.
And I think it's such a cool, unique thing because it immediately ties the show, whatever it is that you're doing, into that community. The building offers a certain type of aesthetic that, regardless of how many scenic designers you have, they wouldn't be able to capture that essence. Trying to think of a very specific place. Sometimes just even on the street, though.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of musicians here that will just be playing their guitar.
They'll be busking, yeah.
And that's sometimes what you just got to do and everything. But coming from a theater standpoint, the Hollywood Fringe Festival, it's coming up here in LA in June, and one of my favorite pieces of theater that I've ever seen was last Fringe, and it was the Hamlet Mobile.
Nice.
And it is exactly as it sounds. Hamlet Mobile. They had a van that they cut out. They did some scenic design work in there and lighting, designed by Brandon Baruch. And it was just phenomenal. And it wasn't exactly Hamlet. They took scenes and they did their own adaptation. It would go from just normal talking like how we are, and then they would bring you into the van, and then it would slip into the Shakespeare text. And it really pushed the boundary.
That's cool.
We're talking now, we're near that level of you could have a show in which you get into a car and they just drive and you're writing with these characters and you're an active participant. So I think doing live theater like that in a site-specific thing, that's another type of engagement you can bring.
I mean, that's very similar to the old minstrel shows where they would just have a cart with costumes and instruments, and they'd park, everybody get out, pick out a costume, and they would either have something set, or based on whatever costumes they would grab, they'll do a show. So I mean, I think just taking that, putting it in a van, kind of creepy, but still fun.
A white van. Seriously, the best theater I've seen in LA.
That'd be awesome. I think what would be fun to shoot something would be the Urban Lights exhibit. If you don't live here, there's a thing called Urban Lights. It's by the LACMA, the museum. It's just several old-time kind of gas lamps, just rows, 5 or 6 rows of them in several different spaces, and it's just really cool. And I think that if you could write something that would fit that area, just a small short film or something, I think that'd be just such a really cool visual.
Yeah, one of my favorite places where this is back home in Miami, when my second solo record came out, I had always had a dream of doing this. I got to play inside of a planetarium. in the middle.
Wow.
And there was a laser light show that they actually
cool.
that we created based on the show, and it was the coolest. It was the coolest thing ever. So,
that's awesome. I feel like for me with LA, I've mentioned this to my wife before, is that when we first moved here, I noticed the most is that you can literally cross a street and it's a completely different setting. You could be driving on a street that has some decent looking, nice, average looking houses, go one street over, literally just cross a street, and you're in $1 million, $2 million houses with gates and Bentleys in the driveway, and then you cross another street and you're back to decent average houses, and then I can cross one street and it's obviously a city industrial kind of area, and then go across the street and it looks like New York. Like
that's the beautiful thing about LA, that everywhere you go, it's like a different scene, like what you said, out of a movie. That's why I think there's so many great places to where you can shoot photography or do a movie. I mean, it's just unreal.
Well, and also, unlike New York, granted, I have never been to New York, so perhaps those of you who maybe can attest to this. Sometimes I find like theater, specifically theater, because I come from a theater background. There's Broadway,
right?
And then there's off-Broadway, but it's more centralized. Whereas a theme, obviously, that we've discussed on this podcast is that arts is spread out throughout Los Angeles.
Right.
As of this recording, we're recording in a theater, the Studio Stage, and it's one of hundreds and hundreds of small theaters here in Los Angeles that people decided, you know what, I'm going to come here, I'm going to tell stories that we want to tell for this community.
Were you planting a flag? You were doing a very interesting fist gesture.
It was a planting of the flag of theater.
I claim this stage for theater.
And Dionysus, Greek goddess of theater.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
No. Stop it. I gotta get out of this accent. We're all performers in some way, even writers and that. So one of the most important instruments we have is obviously our bodies. Right? How do we as people, what's the best way for us to keep our bodies healthy and stay ready? You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially for you, Eric, because you're always going on tour.
I mean, exercising, obviously hydrating. I mean, I stay away from smoking, and really I don't even drink. But yeah, just constantly staying hydrated and just staying fit. I mean, you have to in this world. I mean, I hate to say it, it is an image-conscious world we live in, especially in our worlds that we live in. So yeah, it's very important to just be healthy and, eating right.
And it sucks.
Yeah,
like,
it does.
Eating. I'm not gonna BS. I'm a big guy. I've done diet after diet. Right now, I'm working on a diet right now, and eating right is the worst. And I'm not saying that to bring anybody down. It's realistic, and I want people to know. Everyone knows it sucks.
Well, it's just so hard because I'll know from a primitive level, we want to eat whatever we can because it came from a place of survival. You like this, you enjoy it, you can sustain on it. You don't want to do anything else but eat that.
Exactly.
Well, I'd say on top of that, it now comes from a place of addiction. Also, I mean, sugar's an addictive drug is such a harsh word. It's used for more harsher things, but it's a drug in its own right because it is addictive. I mean, it gives you some sort of euphoria. It does something for you. It perks you up. I mean, cocaine is worse, but it does some of the similar effects. It perks you up. It gets you going. Sugar does the same thing. The fall is just quicker, and it's just calories more than anything. Yeah. But I say all that to say that. You see people. I think the hardest thing for me has always been you see these people who are like, make a smoothie in the morning and then you do 14,000 crunches and you too can have a body like, and they're so positive about it. And it's like, but I don't feel positive when I'm making this spinach veggie smoothie and then doing 14. And I think that's the hard part, that like when I say like eating right is hard and it sucks sometimes. The reason I say this because you need to know that person knows that too. Like the person that seems all positive and upbeat about it, they're just trying to make it sound better for you.
All my friends tell me because I became vegetarian like over 10 years ago. Yeah, get out. And it was like, oh, you're just doing the Hollywood thing, the obligatory. You land in LA, it's like I'm a vegetarian, I'm doing yoga, all that stuff. But no, I mean I did it out of a conscious thing of wanting to just eat better, and it's worked for me. So. And
so, can you speak to you go on tour, and sometimes you have limited
options. How do you stay healthy?
Yeah, how do you stay healthy? Well, my brother, he went on tour when he was performing in the East Coast, and he would pack like a cooler of vegetables of he had his daily
and
things
that's
that
kind
he
of the
needed to
same
have.
thing that we would do. We would pack that stuff. I mean, the good thing is that now there's so many more. I mean, even McDonald's, dare I say, I walk into a McDonald's, they even have healthy options now. So I mean, you can find it. So thankfully there is a lot more options than there were maybe 5-10 years ago. But yeah, we would do something like that where we would pack celery, carrots, fruits and stuff, put it in a cooler, and just try to eat as healthy as you can on the road, because I mean it's just
because one like drink can dry out your throat with all the sugar and stuff that's in it, and then
all I drink water. I mean I'm weird, I'm like an anomaly, because I mean I just strictly drink water, maybe lemonade. Me personally, I try to stay as healthy as I can, especially because I'm singing. I mean there's so many things with having to keep this up, and just sleeping and trying to sleep on the road is just
That's for me is right now one of the biggest struggles of just trying to figure out what your sleep schedule is. Yeah. Daniel, I can only imagine with a 2-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Hey, he's got a regular schedule. It just doesn't. It's not a schedule that I love. He likes to get up at between 5:30 and 6. Nice. I like to get up at 7 to 7:30. I think it's funny, like with Mike, because Michael will call me or I'll talk to Mike and I'm like. I'll talk to him like at 10 o'clock at night about something through text or something. And then the next day I'll talk to him and I'll be like, so hey man, how was the rest of your evening? He's like, well, like 11, we decided to go to a bar. And then 1:30, 2 came back. We kind of watched a few episodes of Master Baking on Netflix.
Nice.
And I crashed about 3, 4. And this is like 10 o'clock, he's at work. And I'm like,
9 o'clock.
Who? Well, no. By the time you're awake and actually talking to me,
that's true.
We actually can talk. But I'll be like, how are you awake right now? And then I realize I'm 33 and I'm not 20 anymore. But no, but it's funny how like you can have those two different. Like I'm the same way. I'll stay up till sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning just because I feel like I can watch some TV. Right. I could just relax for a second because I know if I have to when I go to bed, I'm gonna get up to a kid screaming that he wants to go in the living room and watch his shows. I'm gonna have to
otherwise he'll smack you in the face.
I have to get breakfast ready for the family. Got to get ready myself. And so it's kind of like this is my time to relax, know, and so we'll just have time to some me time. And I feel like, it's still a problem, just kind of like with the same thing. Like, you have to regulate when you go out. I'm not trying to school you on anything. You do whatever you want to do.
Oh, jeez, Daniel.
You do whatever you feel
is
right.
Man.
If I could go out,
I do me.
Sometimes if me and Angie could go out to a bar randomly at 11 o'clock at night, I'd love it. But it's one of the things where I think for me, I'm the same way. I have to figure out you need to go to bed at this time, and that way you're going to be awake to do the things you love to do.
But Daniel, you have a rock concert tomorrow night.
You've got a concert at the Greek you've got to be at, and only Jonah Hill can get you there.
Exactly.
So one thing I love about LA, and this is something I loved when we moved here, is there's so many places to hike in the city, like in the middle of everything going around you, right across, like 2 blocks from the Sony lot, which is surrounded by offices and buildings. There's a hiking trail. I mean, that's to me one of the best things especially compared to like Dallas. I'd have to drive. I still have to drive a little bit, but to find a nice hiking trail that doesn't have kids playing and screaming the whole time, and it's just not just this weird wooded area, but actually has levels and a view, and there's mountains and there's city and skylines.
This is the ultimate
so
for that.
Great.
I think that's one of the reasons why I came too, because I love the outdoors, and we got Fryman in our area, Runyon, in Hollywood. I mean, it's just.
I just love the idea. If you love the outdoors, come to Los Angeles.
Exactly.
The 6th most polluted.
Exactly.
Well, but like Miami,
it's the irony,
Miami, though, for example, like, do you go hiking in Miami?
Because it's all flat.
It's all flat, and it's also muggy, right?
Because very muggy, very humid, but there's no hiking in Miami. I mean, there is no hiking. I mean, hiking is like driving over the bridge to get to Miami Beach. I mean, that's like
hiking to a Cuban sandwich truck.
Exactly.
Now, I think it's really important, like how much LA changed me, and just how much I've been more open to food and items of food, like being willing to try quinoa and trying kale, and not always having to get like the steak. Right. You know what I mean, and things like that. That's something I feel like the culture of LA really drives. It's not if you're not healthy, you suck. It's just hey, there's more. It's just more available to be healthy here.
I think coming from Miami, we had so many different types of food: Ecuadorian food, Honduran, Chileno. I mean, all these different types of food that you can have. So I kind of came in here. I was like, oh, this is just more of that. But just, now we got more of the Asian, infusion here. And you have Mexican. And it's just, it's awesome.
LA just has these pockets. Like any culture you could possibly think of probably has a little town in here. Like we even have like a little Bangladesh.
Yep. And
it's just amazing. There's so much variety that you can check out in this town.
Absolutely. And the things you love, yogurt, ice cream, burgers,
they're
pizza.
all still here.
They're all still here. But there's also healthier versions of those that people have worked on where you go and you're like, hey, you can have this version of pizza that may not be 4,000 calories. But
or better yet, a more authentic version. Rather than calling a chain food pizza place, you could go to a mom and pop place that have been making pizza for years and years and years.
Yep.
This is Hollywood Food Hustle. So let's talk. We kind of mentioned this, I think, in the previous episode about modern day music, and I think at the beginning of this episode. Let's kind of get more into that, like modern versus classic.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a question for that. Like, it's just what are your feelings about the changes? Because obviously, there's not bands like really. There's not I don't think there's an Aerosmith nowadays. Or not one that's on the top 40.
Exactly.
There's not a Who. There's not really a Rolling Stones. I don't think there's like that kind of mania anymore.
There isn't, again, because of getting back to what we said about, I don't think music is driving the culture anymore.
Right.
I think it's...
do you think it's because it's oversaturated in a lot of ways? Because you can make music in any form or fashion?
Maybe that's part of it. I think the other change is, too, the value of music has been devalued. And that's one of the things that when I mentioned to you in the previous episode about Bob Lefsetz, the guy that I talked to you about, he talks about a lot about all this stuff. And I think music, ever since, with the whole thing with Napster back in the early 2000s and that whole shift where you're
going digital.
And I mean, it's happening with every medium. I mean, we were the first guys to get it. Now you guys are the ones that are getting the hit now because everything is going from a physical model to a streaming model it's good in a lot of ways. Again, to me, I think there's an opportunity in everything. It's just the way you approach it. But I think with the advent of the Napsters and the Kazas of the world and the music being downloaded and so readily available, I think it devalued the music to a certain extent. And that's why I think another reason why, even though you'll hear a lot of people say that music is what, you can remember a song to a time in your life. I mean, to me, that's just one medium. That you can't do that with anything else. Although with movies, you can remember a scene in a movie that can bring you back to a time in your life too. But I think music is the one that really drives that, and that's why I think that show that we were talking about earlier is so cool because he kind of, takes those two different times in history and kind of merges them together and shows how music was driving.
This is the soundtrack by The Rock.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean. I think there's a lot of great music if we're going to get into modern versus the classic. I think there's great music in every era. So there's a lot of great music. I'm not one of these guys that, oh my God, it all sucks. It's terrible. There's incredible bands that are coming out that I love that are I think they're doing some innovative things. It's just now we have, like you said, a big glut of this music because now everybody can do it and everybody thinks that they're a musician when they're really not.
Right. And I think for me, I always talk to people like, you have like your golden oldies stations now where it's like they'll play like, Beatles and Rolling Stones and, the old school like Green Door and things like that. And I always wonder like 20 years from now, like what's going to be on our classic station, like the classic station from our period. Like what is so... just representative and so memorable.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to say because you don't.
How are they going to fill? That's not good. Yeah. If they only played music from let's say the thousands to now, like 2000 to now, and it's a classic station for that. What are they going to like?
It's going to be like classic Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. It's going to be.
But they want it classic that way, Eric. They want it that way.
I think maybe one reason why that question could be so hard to answer is because back in the classical days of the 60s, 70s, there weren't as many divisions of music in a way. There was rock and roll.
Yeah.
And certainly bands played harder, or so, but now there's so many different variations.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a real fascinating book that actually my partner turned me on to years ago. It's called What Would Google Do? From Jeff Jarvis. It's a really cool book because it talks about how we have become in this society, it's become a massive niches. No matter what it is that you do, if you go to music, there is millions of niches and sub niches. Even in film and television, it's gone into all these, sub-genres and genres of music, of movies that are being produced. And so it's one of these things where I think back then, media was just 3 channels. You had ABC, NBC, CBS. That was it. Now it's like you've got 650 channels to choose from. It's like, there's so much choice and there's everything on demand now. And it's interesting because I think it's such a creative, I said it earlier that we're in such a creative zenith, at least with television now, because there's so much great television that's come out with all these series that have come out on Netflix and, all these different things that we probably will mention. But it's just interesting to see, but there's just so much of it now that you have it all at your fingertips,
Interesting that you say that, because you could have a band like Led Zeppelin come out, and because there weren't as many different radio stations or anything like that, it broke across all streams. Talking about television, you have Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad comes out on, and because it's on multiple different platforms that support that, everyone starts pushing that. You have some artists out here that I think everyone can universally agree, like, they have something that's going on. But it's so hard when you're going for one specific market within this, all of these subcategories and everything like that. The likelihood of everyone thinking like, oh, that everyone needs to hear that.
Yeah, the hardest thing for anybody to do now is to get people's attention. I mean, to try to get somebody's attention, it's like really hard to do. I mean, you have to have like extraordinarily incredible product that's going to speak to everybody, whether it's you're developing a series. I mean, you see a show like Stranger Things, which I'm a huge fan of, because it's just like, it's just the classic, E.T., Goonies. They somehow did that, and they captured that vibe again of that time, and they did it in a way, but with a modern twist, and it's just such a fantastic. I mean, I'm just salivating for Halloween to come for that second season.
I know, me too.
And I mean, there's just so many great shows. The OA. I mean, just on and on and on. All these great shows that are coming out. So I know we're getting off track.
Totally.
Let's just talk about Netflix.
Let's just talk about Netflix.
But I think it's important. Like for me, as I think about it, I think also it goes into the artist of like writing. And what are you putting out as an artist? Not condemning anybody's music or what they believe is fun and exciting, or what if they want. If you want to put out, I just want to put out songs people can dance to and have a good time. Great, that is fantastic.
Well, it's still about setting up that story, setting up an environment in which someone could feel like I can go out dancing to this.
But I think part of it is also like when you listen to the lyrics, and I think that's another thing, people don't listen to lyrics a lot of times. I think there's several people that say I listen to lyrics and I take in because, and whether it's because I'm a writer or what, but I listen to lyrics. It's like I'm like, this means nothing. Like this means all you're saying is the same thing over and over again. And it's because it's numbing. And it's just like you just void it out and all you hear is the music.
So when you start to write a song,
how do you make it numbing?
How do I make it numbing? Well, I start with a bottle of wine. What was your question?
Oh, just your process of
of coming up with writing. It really depends. I mean, it can happen any number of ways. I mean, typically I'll get together with Ramon, which is my writing partner in the band, and we usually come with like armed with ideas that we've either I usually will hum things, or I'll play guitar parts that I think are cool, and we just come into a room and we just start exchanging ideas, and we'll listen to certain things that are going on, and we just decide, okay, that one sounds cool, let's go on that. And so basically the process begins from there. We start writing the music and start trying to get the arrangement down, and typically it's very rare for me that words will start coming out automatically. It'll be more of like the auditory listening to the music, and that to me starts shaping the vibe of what I'm going to write about.
Interesting. So it's the music is what informs the words.
But sometimes the words come automatically. Like sometimes I'll just be, usually I'm just mumbling nonsense, but sometimes a word or a phrase comes out of that I'm like, oh, that actually sounds cool, and then I start building on that. But more times than not, it's us working on the music, and then I'll be humming melodies. And then when I get back on my own and I'm alone, the mood of the song, it could be a melancholy song, it could be a very aggressive song. It usually will dictate what I'll write about, depending on the tempo and all that stuff. It's really weird, but sometimes it'll just come out like all at once, you know.
And so then to bridge with Daniel, like when it comes to a message or what story or anything that you're trying to set up there, you get the music, so you go back.
Yeah, then I go back and then I'll be there alone, and then it's just a long process of sometimes it'll come right away, but the subject matter it really, for me, it influences the mood of that song, the way that I feel about that song. Like we had a song that came out with our first EP, Karma, which is, you hear that song, you hear the lyrics, you already know what that is about and what happened. And that song, the minute I heard that riff being played to me, I was like, oh my God, I already knew, because I was in a place at time where something was going on in my life, and that connected immediately the dots with that song, and I could just write it, and it was just like the song wrote itself. Other times it'll take me a longer time, because I'm a real perfectionist and I'm trying to get better as a lyricist, and I really have tried to up my game, especially with this particular album and the different subject matter that I'm talking about. And a lot of it is, like a lot of writers, songwriters will tell you, it's personal experience. So a lot of it is coming to me from personal things that are happening to me or things that I'm observing.
Do you find that to be true, Daniel, as a writer?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely this idea that you like, for me, it's one of those things where I'll come up with a small glimmer of an idea of, usually it's a sentence, like, what if there's a girl who has superpowers that fights MMA? And it's like, okay, how can I take that and make that something interesting?
Right.
And then you go, okay, well, what if part of that, like, what's the human part of it? What's the humanity? And you go, okay, what if she is at the same time dying of cancer, and the superpowers are what's slowing down the cancer, but she's still dying? And so, okay, there's the human side to it.
Is that an idea? That's a good
idea. I'm just making this up on the spot. But copyright. Trademark.
That's been trademarked.
But I'm just saying, like, so you think of that and go, okay, and then from there, depending on if it's a feature or if it's episodic, then you go, okay, what's the ending? Like, what's the beginning, what's the ending? That's what I do. Right. I always feel like I need to know, not that it has to be finite, because my endings have changed on other things, but I'll already have an idea of, like, this is kind of where I want it to go. And then halfway through, if it's like, you know what, this is taking me somewhere, I'm open to where the story takes me, but I'll have an idea, like, okay, this would be kind of a cool shot at the end if this is what happened. And then you also need to think, like, what's the theme? Like, what's, that's another thing I come up with. Okay, what is with that sentence, what does that sentence thematically tell me? And where do I get the theme from that single sentence?
Yeah.
And it's this weird step. It doesn't all happen like in 5 minutes where I'm like,
right.
this. Oh, and then this is the ending, and this is the theme. But it's just like, that's kind of how it grows. Is it goes from that sentence to the humanity to, okay, this is kind of how I see where that story could possibly go. But what's the theme? So I know kind of what do I need to put in thematically into the story.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, for me, like with music, I used to write music all the time. Also, they were terrible songs. No one will ever hear them. But one of the things I always found interesting is I always wondered, like, does the music come first or the lyrics? And I think it could be either or.
It can be either or, but for me, more times than not, it's the music that will come first, and then it'll be something that I'll sing, or like I said, a lot of times I'm just singing nonsense because I'm trying to figure out what the melody is. But sometimes a phrase, like what you said, a sentence in your world, but me would be a phrase, and I'm like, oh, I really like that. I can kind of build on that, and then I just start building, and then it just starts coming out.
But I think it can be the same thing. I think Mike can attest to this, where if you think of, like, that would be a really cool, if I think of something like that would be a really cool line in a movie. What movie could I put that line
exactly.
in? I think it's that kind of same.
And I wanted to ask Michael, because I saw you recently doing the Edgar Allan Poe, which was incredible. How do you get or prepare? Because, I mean, man, that was very intense. You were incredible.
Thank you. So this was the production I was in, Nevermore, over at Theater Unleashed in North Hollywood. And as Eric was just saying, I played Edgar Allan Poe, and I talked a lot with Matt Ritchie, the playwright, for that. And
it was an original, right?
It was an original play, and so much of it, though, was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe. There are so many tracings of his stories in this play.
Right.
And, of course, Edgar, in this play, is living those moments.
Exactly.
And so, for me, it was just, like, for me, I normally don't have time to read a book. So I'll listen to it. And so I was downloading all the audio books that I could find, and normally it was Christopher Lee narrating these Edgar Allan Poe stories and stuff.
He went to the chamber.
Not even close.
Oh, dang it.
But so much of it was just trying to get as much of a feel for not only his stories, but also researching him as a person.
Yeah, because he was such a,
he was
multifaceted. Like,
he just had such a sad life, and the more you understood the tragedy of the artist, I as an artist could then inform my own idea, my own opinion of what he could possibly have been. And so much for me is also just finding the voice.
Right.
Because Edgar Allan Poe wasn't from Northern California.
Yeah, right.
You know, so much of it was like reaching out to friends of that area because he grew up a lot in Baltimore.
Right.
Slowly trying to get those tracings. Once I understood what he could possibly sound like with his stories, and then with also the history of who he was, could I find my voice?
Yeah, and I love how they interspersed the different parts of his story. I mean, it was really cool.
The conversations I had with Matt, and I'd love to get him on this podcast one day, but how long it took him to write that play. It takes a long time, especially when you're using such a known property.
I think, especially going back down to the songwriting, I think one thing, especially, I mean, you've written some stuff as well, in the sense of scripts and things like that. You know, I think how important words are in general, because, you know, how you form a sentence says something completely different if you form it a totally different way. Exactly. If you mix the words in a different way, or if you use a different word than this word. And so when you are writing the lyrics, when you kind of get it down, how many, like, what's the average amount of drafts do you think you go through?
It depends, because I'll be writing to like the time. There was one song that we recorded for this record called Idiosyncrasies, which is just talking about me and the quirkiness of me. So it's a conversation with myself.
Right.
And I literally I was writing the lyrics to that song as I was getting ready to sing it. And I literally finished the lyric and I said, okay. And I literally went into the room and did that song in like one take. But it's the coolest song. But I did like a couple of, like, maybe that was like a 2 draft thing that I did, but usually it'll be like 5, 6.
Right.
I mean, I'm constantly like going back and you know.
Well, it always comes down to word choice.
Right.
How effective would To Be or Not to Be would have been if
should I or should I not?
You know, I'm thinking about killing myself, or should I not kill myself? What's all that about?
What is the right word to use? There is no right. It's what I guess you're feeling at that moment. I mean, the cadence has a lot in music. It's like, you know, you're reading like lines in a stanza in a poem, you know, or you know, alliteration. I mean, there's so many.
What do you stress? What do you not stress?
Exactly.
I think what's funny is, again, it's the intricacies and the how non-simple theater can be, is that, you know, if it's not to be or not to be, if it's like, should I do this or should I not do this, for Hamlet that doesn't work. But if you're writing a story about someone else who's considering suicide, maybe them saying something like that for that character could mean just as much as Hamlet.
Exactly.
You know?
But looking at word choice, though, just the idea of just to be.
Right.
Or not
to
well,
be.
And then the question of what is to be?
What is
being?
Yeah, and then so like
let's discuss being.
Let's get Shakespeare on this podcast.
Let's get Shakespeare up in this.
We're picking him up next week.
One question is, one thing I would there was a band kind of going with that Idiosyncrasies, right?
Yes.
There was a band I saw a long time ago at Warped Tour.
Okay.
It was a girl and a guy lead singer.
Okay.
And one of the things, they were probably my favorite band I saw out of all the non-popular bands.
Do you remember their name?
The In Crowd, or in the In Crowd, or something like that.
I think I know who you're talking about, yeah.
But their second album, they don't do this as much, and so I don't actually like their second album as much. But in their first album, in the performances we saw, the girl and the guy, pretty much all the songs are them almost as a relationship having conversations. And it's about like either like him asking her out and her wanting him to ask her out, or vice versa, or them having a fight in the relationship. But everyone all told this story, and because you have these 2 lead singers playing the parts, it was so fascinating because I'd not seen or heard anything like that. Their second album, the female takes more of the lead in it, and it's not. And I was like, I really love that idea of having almost this conversational like I think when it was like you were sitting there something and I wanted to talk to you, and like the girl was
but
like,
they're singing it,
and, like, and the girl's like, I saw you at a club but I was too afraid to say something, and it's like, but it's just like,
and they were acting out like the parts.
No, they don't act it out, but it's just they don't need to, like in the music you can hear it, and I really, just that kind of reminded, I really love like taking that chance and doing something different and kind of twisting it.
One of my favorite examples of that is A Perfect Circle.
Oh my God.
One of my favorite albums of all time is 13th Step.
13th Step,
And the entire album is this guy's trip into insanity and fighting like this other version of himself that is, seeking power and, is wanting to put him down. But it's all about him finally choosing himself and leaving this negative part of him behind. Yeah. And kind of what you just said, you can tell a story with an album. Well, but I think, just real quick though, I think that's also one of the, because so much is about streaming and getting that one-hit song, do you find it as a musician, as a songwriter, you can't think in that.
I still think in those terms. I mean, this record, this Rise and Fall of Babylon, it's not a concept record, but there is songs that lend themselves to those themes. There's a song called,
it's very thematic.
Yeah, there's a song called Freedom that's talking about the oppression and all the things that are going on, and you get the gist of what's going on there. There's a song called We Are the Ones that's talking about all of us, how we are, and how we need to kind of rise above what's happening and kind of take that power back and empowering ourselves.
You keep naming these very insightful titles, and I keep waiting for like one of them to be like, "Gotta get that money," like you know what I mean? Like money. It's like there's this really cool song, Idiosyncrasies, where I'm like fighting myself, and this song, We Are One, and then the final song, which I think it's probably my favorite, is Dance Until My Booty's Tired.
Exactly.
And I
or
think
bitch better have my money,
or exactly. Where's my hot dog?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's I was gonna actually ask if you do thematic themes. If you do themes for your albums, or if you kind of like try at least.
The idea with this, our first EP was called Welcome to Babylon. It was a play on the name Disciples of Babylon, and this one is kind of going off of that again, not as a play off the name, but just more about what's happening now. The whole idea that
the idea of Babylon being this dream place,
exactly, which is the metaphor is the United States has been known, and you can look it up, and they call it like the modern day version of Babylon, and just how it's just falling apart, and there's just so many things going on. So that whole title was just talking about the point in time that we are in our life right now, where you're just seeing this crumbling.
What's so cool about everything that we're all talking about and stuff is what music can do to inspire.
Definitely.
And maybe this can be one of our last subjects that we touch on, but using music as inspiration.
Well, we talked about it, I think, at the beginning. I mean, with the idea of how it shifts an era, or how it inspires people in a country, in a more deeper meaning,
or how it can set a scene of a movie and just totally make that scene. I mean, it's just without music, it's like, to me, without that music, a lot of movies could not have that impact that it would have. Listening to John Williams of that opening scene when you see Lucasfilms Presents and you hear, I mean, man, that just gives you chills.
I was just about to ask, can we all think of a movie that would not be what it is without the score? And I think we can all agree.
John Williams. I think John Williams movies.
And there's some movies that there's no music, that obviously that is the strongest. Yeah, and that's the strongest thing about it.
I'm trying to think, like The Shining. The silence is
saw The Shining. That is so funny.
The silence is so unsettling. Yeah. And then as the music, or not as the music, as the movie progresses,
it just becomes more part of it. Yeah. Well, Stanley Kubrick was just.
Well, it's having that idea of what is music, where music is not just instruments, but it could be the sounds of the city, or it could be whatever's happening on screen. That's the music for that scene. And one thing that comes for me to mind in the sense of silence is the 13 Years a Slave,
12 Years
12 Years a Slave. 12 Years a Slave. I just added one more year. Sorry. But like, there's a moment. Have you seen?
Yes.
The movie? Okay. I know you haven't seen.
I haven't seen it.
This doesn't really ruin anything, but there's a moment where the lead actor is strung up, and someone chases the guys off that strung him up, so they didn't fully get to stringing him up, and he's struggling. His toes are like in this mud, and that's what's keeping him from like up a little bit where he can get air. But it's incredible because I think in any other case, I think someone would have put some kind of like soft piano music or some kind of like something in the
something
background,
somber.
but there's no music, and it's literally one shot for I'm talking 5 minutes of him struggling on this, because this guy chases these guys off, but nobody helps him.
Right.
And while he's doing this, in the background, you see like the houses of the other slaves and people on the plantation. And as he's struggling, they're coming out and just starting their day, and they just walk around. And then no one runs and helps him. They just go about their day, and it's just all you hear. The only sound is him struggling and the mud splashing and the people starting their day.
So there is those scenes that even is stronger, like that.
Yeah, and it's like if you added music, it would take everything away from it.
And going back to John Williams, Jaws would not be scary if it weren't for that music.
If you didn't have that, you wouldn't have the movie. I think that plays it hand in hand.
I think honestly, if you go, hey, pick a John Williams movie and do a song from it, I think all of us could pick 3 different movies. And Superman the movie. I mean, that Superman song is iconic, so iconic that it's used in other Superman in some form or fashion.
Jurassic Park. I mean, on and on.
One of my favorite mashups, though, is someone put John Williams' Superman and then Hans Zimmer's Superman theme, and they play it at the exact same time, and you can hear where, I don't know if this happened, but with Hans Zimmer you can hear the invocations of John Williams, and it's almost like the opposite, like where John Williams goes here, Hans Zimmer goes the opposite.
Right. Well, like Smallville, which is the story of Superman that was on the CW or WB and then CW, there's moments where they just use like a little bit of
the French horn,
right?
And
comes
it's like
in.
that, and
they're just so iconic.
But when you hear it, it's just like, I'm a huge Superman fan.
Oh yeah.
So like when I hear that music, I'm just like, I well up with like, I'm like ripping my shirt off, and then I go into Hulk Hogan.
Nice.
But it is interesting though how certain sounds, you know what it is. Like Carlos Santana has such a specific sound to his guitar, and when he plays,
you could just tell.
You just know it. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd is the same way.
I thought Gilmore Girls. I don't know. Sorry,
Gilmore Girls.
David Gilmour.
Gilmore Girls.
He did all the
Pink
Gilmore
Floyd did
stuff.
Gilmore Girls.
Or Led Zeppelin. I mean, any of the great bands, they have a certain trait. Pearl Jam. I mean,
Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, I mean, you hear their guitar, you hear their voice.
You hear that opening riff, or you hear that whatever opening sound it is, and you just know exactly what it is, and it evokes something.
It's just crazy.
And I think it's crazy how that emotional attachment we have to music.
But it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Eric, and that music is the universal language.
Yeah, for sure.
In many ways,
to me, it's the most powerful medium on the planet. I mean, not to knock movie, because I'm a huge cinema person.
Get out!
Get out right now!
No, go see the movie. Get out! It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, it to me, it's what moves the world. I mean, it's just you go to any corner of the planet and there's some form of music being played, whether it's some remote tribe of people that we don't even know exist. I just saw something about this tribe that they had been there for I don't know how many years, and people were trying to go there, and they actually killed one of the guys. It's such a remote island. I forget where it's.
They're completely not.
They're completely shut out from anything on the planet. I forget what that tribe is called, but they actually played, and it's fascinating that even that tribe, for such a remote part of the world, has music as part of their thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great place. I think to kind of cut out. I think I can't say anything better than that.
Well, it's just that we're all connected in a way through wherever we're from, whether it's, and I think part of it is like we're raised by our mothers singing to us and stuff. So it's just
hopefully,
but
dads can sing to people too.
Yeah, I guess Daniel. No, but I think it's just music is in all of our lives. In a good way, and it has
some form of fashion.
In some form of fashion, and it has the ability to shape us, and it can shape history as we've seen in the past. And I think we are at a place now where we're going to see something happen.
And I'd say if you're a musician, don't be afraid to shape history.
Exactly.
Don't be afraid to go, I want to do, if you believe something, you believe in something, you feel something, you have whether I agree with it, Michael agrees with it, somebody else agrees with it or not, fight for it. Like, go out there and go, hey, I want to sing this song and I want to make it happen. Now make sure think about it, But be on the right side of history. Be on the right side of music, and make those right choices.
And for you, Eric, any last thoughts that you would like to leave with our?
I would just say that for all the musicians and anybody out there as a creative, I think you have to look at it. And it's one of my quotes. It's like you're running a marathon, and it's not a race. You're running a marathon, and so you have to set yourself up to win the race ultimately, but you can't just do it all in one shot. You got to just really and just be prepared to accept rejection, and to know that it's there's never such a thing as overnight success. I mean, there's a lot of work behind that. You see all these people. I'm always intrigued how people go, yeah, but this guy made it, and it's but you don't see the 20 years that person went through and the journey that they went through to get to there. So I have so much respect for all the people that have made it big and have made a successful career out of their own career, because it's just man, you go back and you look at their journey, and it's the same. You see the same themes happening and the same kind of traits that are happening. So I just say never give up, no matter what.
Anything you want to plug? Anything coming up for you or your band?
Really, we have the record Rise and Fall of Babylon. It's coming out in the fall, so we're excited about that. You can see us online, disciplesofbabylon.com, or Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and whatever social media that hasn't been invented yet.
Do you have any shows coming up? Any concerts?
No shows or anything as of yet, because we're trying to get everything together with this record, but there will be some stuff coming up, but nothing booked yet.
Well, please let us know when you do, because we would love to share with our listeners.
And where can people find your music?
You can find us at disciplesofbabylon.com, me, ericknightonline.com, and if you want to check out the management company, persistentmanagement.com, and if anybody wants to reach out to me that needs any advice or any kind of thing that I can point you in the right direction, you can email me at eric@persistentmanagement.com.
Absolutely. And also, if you go on Spotify, he's not the samba guy.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Fractured Fairy Tales is a good album, I think. That's definitely him.
Cool.
So before we leave, one of the things I love to do, just kind of as a lighthearted end to the show, I always say this, after Friendster and before Facebook, there was a thing called MySpace.
Nice.
Did you have a MySpace?
MySpace, yes.
And one of the great things about MySpace was they had these wonderful quizzes that would bore you to death because you had nothing else to do, and so you just write these stupid answers in these small, insignificant quizzes. I have a 167 MySpace quiz.
Nice.
Before the show started, I asked Eric here to give me 6 numbers. Eric has not seen any of these questions, so these are all going to be on the spot. And the questions are,
all right.
Eric, are you ready?
Yes.
Last song you listened to?
Oh my God. God, you're already putting me on the spot. I don't know. Muse, Psycho. Go ahead.
Okay. Have you ever kissed someone and regretted it?
Yes.
Have you? Are you afraid of falling in love?
No. That's all I've done is fall in love.
We've learned.
I'm still trying to learn. Breakup number 27.
Are you afraid of the dark?
Sometimes.
Interesting.
Sometimes.
Turn the lights off. Have you ever been abandoned?
Yes.
And if you could go back in time, when would you go?
Back to a funny time. No. I don't know. When I was a kid, when I didn't have any worries or anything to worry about.
When I didn't have responsibilities.
When I didn't have responsibilities, exactly.
Well,
I think that's great. I've actually never heard anyone give that.
Back to when I could just sit down, watch some cartoons.
Exactly. When I could just watch Scooby-Doo and not have a problem.
Right. Well, thank you so much again for coming on. We really appreciate it. We'll definitely love to have you back then in the future, especially when your album comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely have to talk to business more, talk music. Maybe music will change by then in some form of fashion. And
I feel like I know you guys so much. Let's all hold hands.
Let's hold hands let's all hum. Let's hum. And back to you, Daniel and Mike, in the studio.
I have arrived. The challenge I face in this life, I survive, conquer this time, swallowed my pride. My ignorance humbles this life. I'm alive. I have arrived, conquer this time. The challenge I'm facing in this life, I survive, conquer this time, swallow my pride. My ignorance humbles this life.
Welcome back, everyone. I think that was our first and perhaps only time in which we'll have a hum exit. But wow, that was an incredible conversation. Music, again, that we just used by Disciples of Babylon. The first you might recognize from our previous episode, that was Freedom. And then you were just listening to Arrived. Let's talk about this Act 2 discussion. I think it was so great to talk about music, not only as this thing that we listen to and enjoy, but that music is very much a tool or a time capsule, a capturing of society at that specific point in time. Of course, in the episode we referenced a lot to the 1960s and 70s, but in any time period, you can look at the music that society is listening to then and there, and it says a lot about where we were. It was very interesting to get Eric's and Daniel's perspectives of the current music today and what that means. On Eric's side, it sounds like he's very much of the mind that we're in this place right now where musicians and the messages that we're trying to have aren't necessarily being put forward by the music companies. That because of business deals and everything like that, a lot of the messages that could be used towards change and creating a conversation is instead being filtered viewpoints from a business perspective, no less, that you have to appease these certain groups and you also have to market this specific type of brand, because if you don't do this, then it's not going to work out. And of course, we've had recent breaks from that mentality with Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar releasing their own albums unannounced, fully produced by themselves. And I think, and Eric definitely alluded to this as well, that this is the direction of the music industry. And look at Mubu TV, which is one of the many companies that Eric Knight has helped found, a resource for musicians and artists to take control over their own artistic paths, to not have to be assigned to having a different business overlooking you, but rather a means to teach you how to be in control of your own art and the messaging and the product of that art, that it's all through you and not through some filtered corporation's viewpoint. So I thought that was a really, really interesting conversation. And I also thought his viewpoint on the Hollywood hustle being a marathon and not a race. And if this podcast is about anything, it's about that. It's about the journey. The chances of you coming to this town and becoming an overnight success are very, very small. I'm not going to rule it out because, of course, there's the exception to the rule. And, of course, I'm probably going to have some listeners remind us on the day of this episode is released of some artists that were overnight successes. But I would argue, and Eric does as well in this past, in just this discussion, that they had done the work, that they had put in the time and energy and focus, and they had a plan for when they got to this town. If you want to be an overnight success, you got to come down here with a plan, and you got to know some people, and you got to know how to network. But if you're like me and a lot of the other artists in this town, it is a journey, and it is a marathon, and you have to build up for it. And there are going to be laps in the journey where you might feel like of walking, or you might have to take a moment to catch your breath and then keep on going. But know that that's okay. It's so easy to get burnt out if you just think of this as a race of comparing yourself to another artist and wanting to try and run past them. You've got your own lane. You've got your own destination of where your marathon is taking you. But also similar to Eric, surround yourself with other artists. He, whether it's his band members or his various other artistic pursuits, he's surrounding himself with artists and helping them out with their journey. And I think that is so great. A lot of the work that I've been able to book as an actor in this town is oftentimes through relationships that I've already built with fellow actors, filmmakers, people of that nature, and it all comes down to relationships. Surround yourself with artists, continue to be inspired by their work, and I think that will lead to a much better approach to your hustle. We'd love to hear your thoughts on our interview series with Eric Knight. He is, of course, the second musician we've had on the podcast. You might remember Kim Tillman. If you haven't listened to our episodes yet, they were episodes 9 and 10. And we would love to know, what are the similarities that you're hearing in their journeys? What are the differences of their approaches? And, of course, there's not one path, right, to take as an artist. There's many to go on. But being on this podcast and having had the chance to sit on all of these interviews, it's amazing to hear the similarities. So I'd love to hear from you, listeners. Of course, you can get in touch with us in various ways. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Hollywood Hustle Podcast, or you can tweet us at LA Hustlecast, or you can also email us at hollywoodhustlepodcast@gmail.com. Coming up next, we have our third Team Hustle episode. Be prepared, folks, because we've got some special announcements that are going to be made. Get ready, everyone. It's about to get really exciting over here, and I can't wait to share this news with you. Until next week, keep up the hustle, everyone. Oh. What was it? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's time to debut the Disciples of Babylon's brand new song, Without You, from their upcoming album, The Rise and Fall of Babylon. We've been talking about it a lot all this week, and we're so excited. Thank you so much to Persistent Management and Symbiotic Records for having Hollywood Hustle be the platform to debut this amazing song. We're excited to share this with you, our audience. So without further ado, here is Without You, recorded by Eric Knight, Ramon Blanco, Guy Bodie, and Chris Toller. Enjoy, everyone, and keep up the hustle.
For
This episode of the Hollywood Hustle podcast was hosted by Daniel Tuttle and produced with Michael Lutheran. Kel Torados is our sound engineer, and Mike Tobias edited our website. For more information about the show, please visit our website at hollywoodhustlepodcast.com.